You don't expect your whole life to change in a single email, especially not while you're serving your country halfway across the world. My name is Thomas Reed. I'm 42 years old, and I've served with the 101st Airborne for most of my adult life. 4 months into my deployment in Al Udeid, the desert heat was brutal, but nothing compared to what hit me that night. The email came during my off shift. Subject line, "Let's be adults about this." I opened it, thinking maybe it was a message about bills or something small back home. Instead, it was the end. 3 sentences. Lauren, my wife of 13 years, had filed for divorce. She'd already emptied our joint savings, and she'd already moved her new boyfriend, Evan, into the house we bought together in Flagstaff, Arizona. The place I had worked on with my own hands during leave, laid the tile, fixed the porch, painted the walls for her. I stared at the screen, numb. The words didn't seem real. I closed the laptop, took a shower in the metal stall with sand blowing under the door, got dressed, went on shift. I didn't say a word to anyone. That night, back in the barracks, I typed one word in reply. Understood. Not because I was okay, not because I accepted it, but because I knew, right then, that no words could fix what had already shattered. My bunkmate, Rivera, glanced at me later. "You good, man?" "Yeah," I said, eyes on the ceiling. "Just something back home." He nodded. "No questions. Men like us. We know when not to push." But the truth? I wasn't shocked. Not really. The signs had been there. The late nights, the cold silences, the gut feeling I'd been trying to ignore. And now confirmation had arrived. Cold, clinical, and irreversible. In a PDF. The days that followed were a blur of routine and restraint. My body went through the motions, briefings, drills, patrol prep, but my mind never left Arizona. Lauren's betrayal didn't hit like a bullet. It bled slow, like a deep cut under armor. And the truth was, I had seen it coming. 6 months before deployment, little things started to change. She stopped asking about my day. Phone calls got shorter. Her voice lacked warmth. She started working late, said they were short-staffed at the clinic, but somehow always came home without stress, without stories. Then came the gym membership, 3 nights a week, but she never broke a sweat, never came back tired, just glowing. New clothes, new friends, ones I never met, a new lock screen on her phone. I didn't confront her. That's never been my way. My father taught me to observe before reacting. In the Army, you don't move until you've confirmed the threat. So I watched, and quietly I prepared. I began moving important documents, my birth certificate, our marriage license, my VA loan paperwork, into a locked storage unit on the other side of town. Lauren never noticed. She wasn't paying attention anymore. I took my grandfather's old watch from the drawer, wrapped in a cloth, and tucked it away there too. Along with my mom's silver bracelet, the one she gave me before she passed. I opened a private account at a credit union she didn't use. Nothing drastic, just a small slice of each paycheck. Enough that if things went south, I wouldn't be starting from zero. Some part of me still hoped I was wrong, that the distance between us was just stress, that maybe she was struggling too and didn't know how to talk about it. But then came the airport. She hugged me like someone saying goodbye to a colleague, not a husband heading into a war zone. Her eyes were dry, her hands loose. I stood there in uniform, gear strapped tight, waiting for her to say something that felt real. All she said was, "Stay safe, okay? No, I love you. No, come back to me." And I knew then, even if I didn't want to admit it, that she had already left me. Not officially, not yet. But emotionally, she'd been gone for months. I boarded that flight not just as a soldier headed for duty, but as a man who knew he was already walking away from the ruins of his own home. 2 weeks after the email, I was eating lunch in the mess hall, chicken and powdered potatoes, same as the day before, when my phone buzzed on the table. I glanced down, a notification from the joint bank account Lauren and I had shared for over a decade. Withdrawal, $88,500. I froze, fork still in midair. The balance left? Just over $22. I tapped into the app, my thumb shaking now. Our savings, $47,000 we'd scraped together over years, was gone, transferred to an account I didn't recognize. It hadn't happened all at once. The log showed a pattern: small withdrawals beginning the week after I deployed, then bigger ones. And now, this, the final sweep. Murphy, a guy from my unit, looked over. "You all right?" I nodded. "Just bank stuff." That night, I called the bank from the base's secure line. The representative confirmed what I already feared. Lauren had been emptying the accounts in steady increments. Quiet, calculated. The transfers started days after I left the country. The last one, the big one, had hit just hours before the notification arrived. I walked the corridor afterward, past guys laughing into phones, FaceTiming their kids, their wives, their moms, living their lives from half a world away. I watched it all happen around me like I was standing underwater, disconnected. That's when Rivera found me leaning against a wall, eyes blank. "Heard you got quiet at dinner," he said. "Something happened?" I hesitated, then finally said it out loud. "She emptied our accounts, moved the boyfriend in, sent the divorce papers while I was on patrol." He didn't offer platitudes or cheap sympathy, just asked, "What's your plan?" I didn't have one. Not yet. That night I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling fan spinning above my bunk until the sun began to rise behind the base walls. Then I remembered something Lauren probably forgot. Before I deployed, I'd set up remote access to our home security system, cameras inside and out, stored in the cloud. I opened my laptop and logged in. There he was, some stranger walking my dog in the yard I mowed every summer, drinking from the coffee mug I'd bought Lauren on our 10th anniversary, wearing my old flannel shirt, faded navy with the frayed pocket, and then Lauren. Laughing in the kitchen, I had remodeled myself, tile by tile, her hand on his arm like nothing had ever existed before me. I didn't scream. I didn't punch the wall. I just closed the laptop, and I made a list. At 0500 the next morning, while the rest of the barracks still slept, I sat alone at the metal desk near my bunk, typing a subject line I never thought I'd need. Need legal help, discreet and urgent. I sent it to James Holloway, a former Army buddy turned defense attorney in Phoenix. He was the kind of guy who read contracts like battle maps and remembered every inch. His reply came an hour later. One sentence. "Call me. Secure line only." I stepped into the corner of the rec room, heart pounding harder than it had during any ambush I'd survived. When he picked up, I told him everything. The forged refinance documents I suspected, the missing money, the man in my house, the camera footage. James didn't interrupt. When I finished, he exhaled slowly and said, "Okay, we've got some work to do." That call flipped a switch in me. I no longer felt broken. I felt focused, sharp, not angry, not sad, something colder, steadier, like I was preparing for a mission. After the call, I opened a spreadsheet. Line by line, I wrote out every action item: review VA loan terms, contact senior officer about emergency leave, request notarized copies of all documents from the storage unit, check my pension access security, start building a digital record of financial activity, pull up every interior and exterior camera feed from the last 30 days. This wasn't about revenge. It was about protection, about reclaiming what was mine before it disappeared in someone else's plan. Lauren thought I'd be blind while deployed, that I'd come home to a closed door and an empty account and just fade away, tail between my legs. She didn't know me. By that afternoon, I'd already uncovered something big. I found a digital copy of a refinance application sitting in our shared cloud drive, the kind she probably thought I never checked. The signature on it looked like mine, almost, but the middle initial was off, the pen stroke too fluid. It was a forgery. I forwarded it to James. He replied almost instantly, "That's felony territory, we'll use it." I didn't sleep much that night, but I didn't pace. I didn't tremble. I just lay there, hands behind my head, staring at the ceiling. Because now, for the first time since the email, I had direction, I had proof, and I had a plan. Lauren didn't realize it yet, but the game had changed, and this time I wasn't the one about to lose everything. 2 months later, I stepped off a red-eye flight into the cold midnight air of Flagstaff, Arizona. I didn't text Lauren. Didn't announce anything on social media. I used my middle name to check into a roadside motel. Plain, quiet, no questions asked. James picked me up the next morning in a dusty gray SUV. He hadn't shaved. He handed me a steaming coffee and a manila folder, thick with paper. "You're not gonna like what's in here," he said. Inside was a copy of a refinance agreement, one I'd never signed, but apparently had. The signature was close, but not mine. The middle initial was wrong again. James had already done the legwork. The new mortgage had pulled $330,000 in equity from my home. 3 months ago. No contact, no consent. "She forged it," I said flatly. James nodded. "And she listed Evan, her boyfriend, as co-applicant. Which matters because he's got a criminal record. 2 DUIs and a fraud charge back in 2019. I sat back in the booth, hands around the warm mug. My house had become a bankroll. My name used like a stolen credit card. My life pieced out like spare parts. "She's not just leaving you," James said, lowering his voice. "She's running a play." I asked for options. "We go to the bank," he said. "Show them your military ID, show them your signature, and then we report the fraud. Quietly, no dramatics, no yelling at her. Let her actions close the trap." So we did. That afternoon, we walked into the same bank where Lauren had signed the fraudulent documents. The loan officer, a nervous guy in his 30s, flipped pale when I handed him my military ID and the real signature on my license. "This shouldn't have gone through," he murmured. I leaned in. "It did. So now we fix it." He promised to flag the account and begin an internal review. I told him he'd be hearing from law enforcement shortly. That night, Lauren texted me for the first time since the divorce email. "Who have you been talking to at the bank? Evan says someone was asking questions." I didn't reply. 2 days later, I filed a formal fraud complaint with the county clerk, along with an injunction. No changes could be made to the property without my presence. Lauren called. I let it go to voicemail. "Nathan, we need to talk." The bank called. "If this is about the divorce, we can talk like adults." Those words again, like adults. Ironic considering what she'd done. Later that day, James called me with a new twist. They froze the funds, but not before $14,600 was transferred out. Guess who it went to? Evan? Nope. Someone named Derek Spencer, real estate agent. Specializes in fast cash home sales. I dug around. He's done deals with Evan before. Looks like they're prepping to sell the house. I felt it like a punch to the chest. I wasn't just being erased, I was being cashed out. James paused. "It's bigger than you think. Spencer and Evan have worked together before. Same pattern. Divorce, refinance, quick sale, then they vanish." I looked out the motel window, the Arizona sunset bleeding into the horizon. This wasn't a marriage falling apart. It was a con. And now I wasn't just a betrayed husband. I was a witness. And maybe the one who could finally shut it down. The next morning, I parked 2 blocks from the house I had once called home. Lauren's car was in the driveway. Evan's truck was gone. I sat behind the wheel of James's SUV and watched in silence, letting the moment soak in. I thought about walking up the steps, knocking on the door, demanding answers. But that wasn't the mission. Instead, I turned the key and drove to the bank's fraud department for a scheduled meeting with their internal investigator, a man named Thompson. He looked like he hadn't slept in 3 days. His tie was crooked, and a coffee stain bloomed across his shirt pocket. "This happens more than you'd think," he said, spreading out paperwork across the table. "Spouses take advantage while the others deployed. You're not the first. But I'm going to be the last," I said, eyes fixed on the transfer list. He nodded solemnly. "We've frozen the refinance account. But some of the money is gone." "How much?" "About half." I leaned forward. "Where did it go?" Thompson hesitated. "That's technically confidential. It's my house. My signature was forged. My money was stolen." He studied me for a beat, then turned the screen toward me. A name popped up. Derek Spencer. I didn't recognize it at first, but James did. "Real estate," he said over the phone. "Fast sales, cash buyers. He's worked with Evan on at least 3 deals in the past 2 years." They were planning to sell the house, I said quietly. The words felt heavy in my throat. Looks that way. The deposits were probably to grease the wheels, get Spencer moving. There's a good chance they've done this to others. James promised to look deeper. I stepped outside, the late autumn wind cutting across my face. For a moment, I wanted to call Lauren, ask her why, ask her how she could let our life become a transaction, but I didn't. Instead, I drove to a nearby park and sat beneath a sycamore tree shedding its last gold leaves. I opened the security app on my phone, pulled up the interior camera feed, and hit record. Inside my living room, Spencer and Evan were laughing. Spencer had a camera taking wide-angle shots of the house. Evan pointed at the countertops I'd installed, the fireplace I'd built. "This one's ready," Spencer said. "I've got a buyer lined up. Cash offer, no inspection." "Perfect," Evan replied. I closed the app, sent the footage to James, and then I sent it to the FBI. By the time the video feed had finished uploading to cloud storage, my hands were steady. The voices of Spencer and Evan echoed in my head, laughing, planning, casually walking through the life I'd built like it was merchandise on a showroom floor. I forwarded the footage to Agent Sarah Patel, the FBI contact James had reached out to days earlier. Subject line, "Happening now." 30 minutes later, the quiet street where my house sat erupted into motion. Unmarked SUVs pulled to the curb. Agents in jackets moved with precision. I watched from a block away, parked behind a hedgerow, heart pounding with something I hadn't felt in a long time, justice on the move. Evan was let out first, cuffed and quiet. Spencer followed, his camera bag still slung over his shoulder, mouth half open as if trying to explain himself to someone who no longer cared. Boxes came next. Bank records, forged documents, listing contracts. Everything they'd tried to hide now in the hands of federal agents. Then came the unexpected. Lauren arrived. She must have gotten a call. I saw her pull up, step out of her car slowly, confusion written across her face. Her eyes locked on the scene unfolding on our front lawn. On the house we once celebrated Christmas in. Her mouth dropped open when she saw the handcuffs. She brought both hands to her lips like a child watching glass shatter. I asked Patel later how she reacted when they told her what was happening. "She looked shocked," the agent said, "but not surprised." I watched from a distance as Lauren stood there alone, her arms folded tight against her chest while federal agents walked past her carrying out our life in boxes. I asked Patel, "What happens to her now?" "That depends," she said, "on what she knew and what you want." I didn't answer right away. There was a time I might have confronted her, demanded answers. But that time was gone. This wasn't about closure. It was about consequences. That evening back at the motel, I sat with James at the edge of the bed, the late news humming in the background. "They're charging Spencer and Evan with conspiracy, wire fraud, and attempted real estate theft," James said. "More if the prescription pads found in Evan's truck tie back to Lauren's office." I didn't say anything. "Her name's not on the charges, not yet." "Let's keep it that way for now," I said quietly. "I want the truth, and I want what's mine. But I don't need revenge." James nodded. Spoken like a man who's already won. Outside, the wind picked up, the kind of wind that carries something away and doesn't bring it back. The federal case moved faster than I expected. Maybe it was the amount of evidence. Maybe it was because Spencer and Evan folded the minute the cuffs clicked. Either way, within 6 weeks, the government had enough to build an airtight case. Spencer cut a deal first. He handed over a list of properties he'd flipped through fraudulent schemes. 12 homes, 3 states, all involving vulnerable families. Most had one thing in common: a military spouse deployed overseas. Evan followed. He tried to spin himself as a pawn, but it didn't hold. His financial trail was too bold, too greedy. In his own words, captured on my security feed, he laid it bare. "We list high, settle low, walk with the cut." And Lauren? She stuck to her story, said she hadn't known Evan's history, claimed she believed I was hiding money and planning to leave her penniless, that the refinance was his idea, and she just signed the forms he gave her. Maybe it was true. Maybe it wasn't. But her name wasn't on the loan. Mine was, and that gave me leverage. After weeks of negotiation, we reached a settlement, full restitution of the stolen funds, signed confession of forgery, complete forfeiture of any claim to the house, pension, or future military benefits. In return, I didn't press charges against her. She walked away without handcuffs, but also without the house, the money, or the narrative. The divorce was finalized 6 months after that first email. No fault, no courtroom drama, just paper, printed and signed. On the day the last document was filed, Agent Patel called. "Just thought you'd want to know," she said. "Evan was sentenced today, 8 years. Fraud, conspiracy, identity theft. Spencer got 12. I thanked her, then paused. "What about the others? The other families they hit?" She exhaled. "Thanks to your evidence, most of them are getting their homes back, or at least restitution. You helped us crack it wide open." After we hung up, I sat on the porch of my rented duplex and stared into the dusk. It was quiet except for the occasional rustle of dry leaves on the sidewalk. 13 years of marriage. Good years once. Real laughter, real memories. That's the part no one talks about. The grief of losing something that mattered, even if it ended in betrayal. Lauren never called again. She didn't need to. There was nothing left to explain. And me? I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt still. Sometimes justice doesn't feel like victory. It feels like breath, finally full, after holding it too long. Sometimes loss doesn't come from the battlefield. It comes from the very place we call home. Thomas's story reminds us that calm, preparation, and self-respect are the strongest weapons when trust is broken. For those who've lived long enough to know life isn't always fair, it's a powerful reminder. Justice may be slow, but it can still come if we stay patient, hold on to our dignity, and don't let pain cloud our vision. You don't have to retaliate to win. Sometimes simply standing tall is enough.